Rockula. Rockula. Me. He's nice. You don't neck on first dates. That's his mother's advice.
Welcome to Cult Musical Zone, and today is a very special episode. We're talking about the criminally underrated cult musical classic, Rockula. Now, Rockula is just now picking up steam with some cult musical fans who are discovering it through our blog, but we have a Rockula aficionado as a guest today. So I'm going to let him introduce himself and tell us a little bit about his Rockula presence online.
Great. Thank you, James. It's a real pleasure to be here. My name is Mike Sims, and I started the Fans of Rockula page on Facebook. I believe it was back in 2017. Even though I hadn't seen the movie until 2016, I immediately fell in love with it and wanted to rally all the fans together so that we could at least see a DVD of it, because it hadn't even ever been released on DVD even at that point. So.
Awesome. So, when is the first time you saw Rockula? You said the year, but in what circumstances did you discover the movie?
Yeah, so I saw it streaming on, I believe it was Amazon Prime at the time. It's been on all different streaming services since then, including Vudu, Tubi. I believe it's on Tubi now for free as well. But I was just flipping through looking for quirky musicals because I've always enjoyed, those cult musicals like, Rocky Horror and Shock Treatment, Phantom of the Paradise. And I just happened to stumble across it, and I instantly fell in love with it. It's so just out there and quirky and fun and everything that a cult musical should be. So
The first time I discovered it, it was by accident. Because I had just got into Rocky Horror, Shock Treatment, Hedwig, Phantom of the Paradise, and I wanted more. And so I was turned on to Rockula and Meet the Feebles, and then a movie called 20 Centimeters, and it just kept on and on and on. But this was in 2007. But at that particular time, Rockula was very, very hard to find. There were some bootleg versions, circulating online, some very poor quality DVD transfers. But I think the first time I saw it was probably 2008, and a very gritty bootleg version that had been ripped and posted online. I'm not quite sure the site that I saw it on first. But yeah, it took me a couple of tries to get into the plot, but the music captivated me more than anything. And so I guess the first question that I wanted to ask is, what do you make of the plot of the film? Do you think it's groundbreaking, or is it just fun?
It's something, isn't it? What plot? No, it's man, Rockula is a one of a kind creature. It's something that honestly I think they sat around, got stoned, just decided, let's just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. It is probably the most contrived plot for a cult musical that I've seen, and that's saying a lot when you've seen some of these. So yeah, it's out there. Do you want me to kind of give the brief synopsis of the plot?
No, but there is something that I think you all shared. Didn't Rockula start off as something completely different? Didn't it start off as much deeper?
Yes. So I talked to the director and his brother, Luca Bercovici and Hilary Bercovici, who did the music, the incidental music, the score for the film. And they both said that the original script for Rockula was a serious movie. They had already sold the Golden Globus brothers on the title alone. And so they wrote this serious script, and then they brought it to them, and they were so unhappy that it was a serious script that they were like, no, the title Rockula is funny. I want to see something funny. And so they had to scrap the entire original concept, which was much more of a romantic film and a serious number. So a little bit of that survives into the the version that we see now, but most of it got scrapped. So
Yeah, and I think it's, like Shock Treatment and a lot of different cult musicals, the script changes so much because of the studio. And in that regard, Rockula is very similar to the cult musical classic Teen Witch, because Teen Witch started off as a direct spin-off of Teen Wolf, but then it became, in my opinion, a far superior film to Teen Wolf. And it actually didn't start off as a musical. Teen Witch just started off as just a comedy, but then they're like, oh, let's add this, let's add this. So that's probably what happened with Rockula. They were like, what, like you said, whatever would work, let's just throw it at the wall and see if it sticks. Let's add this character and this subplot and this. But actually, I was talking to someone recently, I didn't notice how many cult superstars are actually in the film. I mean, there are.
oh, it's crazy. It's like a who's who almost of just, cult musical even. You got your Susan Tyrrell from the Forbidden Zone. And of course her work with Johnny Depp and other just great, great movies that she was even nominated for an Oscar one time, I believe. So, you've got her in there. You've got Tony Basil, who of course came up with Shabadoo and Rerun in the Lockers in the 70s, basically invented modern dance. And so you've got this awesome Hey Mickey, You're So Fine dance pioneer. It's crazy how many great, quirky actors and actresses and performers they got for this movie.
And then Thomas Dolby.
Oh my gosh, forget about it. He's one of the coolest people I had the pleasure to talk to. I did a 30th anniversary Zoom reunion a couple of years ago, and he was cool enough to show up and was just so entertaining in general. We were doing a Zoom meeting, and he stood up halfway through and he said, "Oh, I forgot my pants." Everybody was just cracking up. But he's so funny throughout the movie, and he's just that kind of guy in general, just the consummate entertainer. She Blinded Me with Science, like one of the quirkiest pop songs of the 80s, and just all throughout the 80s, he was doing this experimental, unique music. And yeah, he's a cult star in himself. So.
And doing some research on this episode, there's a connection to Howard the Duck. He wrote music for Howard the
Yes,
Duck.
he did the score for Howard the Duck.
I mean, the incredible songs "Don't Turn Away" or "Don't Walk Away." I mean, the songs in Howard the Duck are actually great, and it's that's another underrated. I think it's like one of those films that it's cool to hate, but it's actually not bad
Right.
considering Marvel has become, which is just a money-making machine.
Right.
Or the Duck in itself is actually quite original. This is a question I always ask guests on this series, and it's, who are your favorite characters in the film and why? If you had to choose, I guess, two favorite characters, why are they your favorite?
Oh gosh. Well, first and foremost, it's got to be Ralph for me, and the reason is that I'm a sucker for the downtrodden. I'm a nerd myself. I was always kind of a little bit of a loser in high school, and Ralph is just the consummate loser guy. He's just down on his luck and he can't score. That's the whole tagline of the movie. He hasn't scored in 400 years. And tonight's the night, and that was me all throughout high school, just awkward, doing whatever I could to get the girl to pay attention to me, singing rock songs to try and show off for the girl, so I totally identify with Ralph. So he's got to be my favorite. Plus he can turn into a bat, and who doesn't love that, right? But other than that, I mean, Stanley just cracks me up. Thomas Dolby's character, Stanley, I laugh so hard during the same scene every time in the movie where he's dressing up like a pirate in the restroom and he can't get his balance and he just falls and he's like, God damn it, it's so funny. Like, he just slayed that role. So
I love Ralph as well. He reminds me a lot of Jim Carrey's character in Once Bitten. Two
yes.
vampires that need to score or want to score. Um, what about Mona? I mean, her character's not given much growth, but that voice, And
Oh,
it's
and she's such a pretty girl too. One of the things that came out during the 30th anniversary Zoom session was one of the little girls who's in the band visiting kids that do the United State of Beat song. They were like every day that Tawny Foray would walk onto the set. They would just look at her in awe. You know, she had this perfectly curled hair, this perfect figure. You know, the clothes that they were putting her in were just outstanding, unique stuff. So yeah, I mean, she's very talented. Actually, she has a solo music career. She's a local musician in LA, and does quite a bit of music out there, and has several albums now as well. So very talented. Yes.
that leads, since you brought up a point about the singing voice and everything, that's another question I always ask is your favorite songs from the film. And I think if you have to pick two, only two. I think my two favorites are By My Side, which I think is a kick-ass 80s ballad. But I think the other one that was my introduction, I think I YouTubed before I saw Rockula, was Break These Chains. And for years and years and years, that song had been stuck in my head. What about you?
Oh man, that's tough. I literally love them all. Um, but I guess By My Side, it's so romantic and such a throwback to the love power ballads of the 80s, you know. Really, it could have been done by any of the big hair bands back in the 80s, and they would have had a huge hit with it, I think. And then it's so hard. I mean, I really literally do love them. I guess the one that I hum the most is a United State of Beat, which actually was written and originally sung by the producer of the movie, Jeffrey Levy. He is formerly known as Fella Johnson, who was kind of a solo British pop punk, neo punk thing in the early 80s. I actually went out and bought the original 45 of the single, and it's very similar, but it doesn't have the little girls singing in the background. So I guess that would be my other favorite, just because it's so catchy.
So I know that you all posted in the Facebook group about the trauma or just the shame of an official soundtrack not being released to the public. Of course, you know there's some soundtracks circulating with Rockula fans that it's a rough cut basically. But what do you make of the brilliant? It's kind of like Teen Witch. Teen Witch is some demos have been released and ripped from Blu-rays and stuff. But what do you think of the shame of an official um, soundtrack never being released, especially since there's such songs?
Yeah, it's just a travesty. It's it was just as bad as the fact that, well, even worse. It was worse than the fact that even up until 2015 there was not even a DVD of this movie. But then on top of it, for there never to have been a soundtrack released, not even Rhino Records, like nobody thought to release this amazing soundtrack. Mind blowing, an utter travesty. Yes.
It is. It is. It's interesting. Um, I think, thank God for Arrow, or not Arrow. Arrow didn't release the Blu-ray. Who was it? Shout Factory?
Yeah, it was Shaft Factory.
Arrow released Shock Treatment over here in the UK on Blu-ray, but Shock Treatment still hasn't been released on streaming nor Blu-ray yet in the States. And it's interesting that what gets picked to be released and what doesn't.
Oh
Now
yeah, we had to do quite a bit of lobbying to get that Blu-ray released. It wasn't something that they just were on top of. Like we had to actually lobby WB and Shout Factory to get that done. So it was a labor of love. It was an effort by the fans and the cast and crew of the movie to make that happen. And now they're all sold out. So it's out of print again and all sold out. They sold over 6,000 copies. So yay.
market, and especially with blogs like I have and your Facebook group, and with Tubi and Amazon Prime, people are discovering it and it's taking on a life of its own. When I post like cult musical song of the day and I posted Break These Chains, I had like 6 messages. What is this movie? I was like, it's Rockula, and it's on YouTube and Tubi and Amazon Prime. You need to watch it. And which leads into the next question is, what do you think the legacy of Rockula has become? What do you think the legacy of Rockula has become?
Um, it's not happening fast enough for my taste. I would like everybody to see this immediately, but it has finally broken out of its shell after all these years. After there's all different kinds of people who love it. Um, One of the guys who's in it, who was at the 30th anniversary Zoom reunion, he plays Elmo in the movie, the kind of good old boy who comes to the graveside during one of Stanley's Death Park commercials. He said that somebody walked up to him at work, and he was working in like a warehouse or something, and said, "Hey, you're in my favorite movie." And he said that was just, it blew his mind. He said, "No, I'm not." And he's like, "Yeah, Rockula." And he's like, I couldn't believe that somebody just out of the blue recognized me from Rockula, and it was their favorite movie. So stranger things have happened, but man, it is getting that audience finally that it deserves. So
It is. And I think the thing about cult musicals, and it's such a, an obscure thing to say cult, but for me, cult means forgotten, obscure, underrated. Um, and I think cult musicals are like a family. You've got Rocky Horror, you've got Shock Treatment, you got Phantom, you've got Hedwig, you've got Teen Witch, you've got Meet the Feebles, you have Pirate Movie, you've got Grease 2, and it's a domino effect. People keep wanting to discover more. And then Rockula could lead into others, such as Billy the Kid and the Green Bay's Vampire. I don't know if you've ever seen that cult musical.
I have not. That sounds like something to be right up my alley, though.
It's for all intents and purposes, it's a British cult musical. It's available also on Tubi and Amazon Prime. As far as I know, it's the only snooker/pool vampire movie musical, and it is very
Okay.
Rockula. And that opens up Son of Dracula, which has Ringo Starr in it, which is another cult musical vampire movie. So you have like the holy trinity of vampires. And then, of course, there's the movie Suck, which I think would be up your alley, which is a cult vampire movie musical that came out a few years ago. But yeah, it's like a domino effect. So, like you said, I think Rockula hasn't caught on yet, but I think if you give it some time, it will. I've tried to find Rockula merch, but a lot of it merch, of course, is fan made, which is how a lot of this starts. I mean, it shows that there is power in the fandom because you got the Blu-ray released. You're gonna show me something.
Yeah, I am. So this is just, you're talking about fan made art. That's a shrinky dink of Miss Phoebe. It says The Night, the name of that song that she does. And, it's fan made. It's not, 24 karat gold, but it's fun.
I think it was really kick-ass that Dane Cameron appeared on the Blu-ray in interviews. I think that was really awesome that he embraces that film. Do you know of any other actors or actresses in the film that embrace it and its cult legacy?
Oh yeah, so Tawny, her last name is Ellis now, but Tawny Foray, who later became Tawny Ellis the musician, is also on the Blu-ray. She's in the commentary, and she was actually the first person on the cast and crew that I reached out to when I first put together the site, and she was just so tickled that somebody recognized that she had been in that movie, and she comes there all the time now. It's great. We're friends. We've gotten together a few times on social media events, and I try and kind of push her music career out there a little bit for some exposure. And yeah, she's just really glad that the movie's being rediscovered. And then of course the director and his brother also were on the Blu-ray commentary, and they were the biggest help in getting that soundtrack put down as best as they could. They ripped it from a cassette tape and got the best technology possible to turn it into MP3 files that everybody could listen to. So,
What about Thomas Dolby? Does he embrace the cult status of it? I know you said that he did the Zoom anniversary.
oh yeah, and it was so cool of him to do that. And yeah, at first it was like pulling teeth. He's, I think, more famous than just about anybody involved with the film. He went on to do some amazing things. He became the director of music for TED Talks and has scored all these movies. Tucker the Man in His Dream, Howard the Duck, and he also now is a professor of music, I believe film scoring at Johns Hopkins University. So he refers to himself now as Professor Dolby, which is fantastic. But yeah, he said that, the kids don't know who he is. They don't know his one-hit wonder that he had in the 80s. But it's their parents, and their parents will show up sometimes. Oh my gosh, it's Thomas Dolby, and he's like, I'm just Professor Dolby now. But he said every now and then he'll get a student who has caught it online and, just loves it, and we'll talk to him about it a little bit. So yeah, he's finally accepted that it's reached cult status. And did you know about the missing scene with him? Okay, so this was another exercise in perseverance. Once we got the Blu-ray made, one of the things that I was trying to get done was there was a missing scene. He traded the rights for his song Budapest by Blimp, which is used during the kind of little bit of a breakup scene in the movie. It's a very slow, beautiful, sad song. He traded the rights to use that in the movie for a can of footage that was a scene that he did that got cut from the movie. And the scene is him doing a song called I Hold Your Hand in Mine, which was kind of a cult song, all about a guy who falls in love with a girl who's dead. And he wants his love with her to last forever. And so he's preserving her body. And it's a very, very funny song. And he was so bummed that they cut it from the movie that he said, I'll trade you the rights for this other song if you let me keep that footage. And so I found out the footage existed from the director, and I got a hold of him. I said, hey, is there any chance you could dig up that footage so that we can put it in a special, edition Blu-ray of Rockula? And unfortunately, it didn't happen quite in time. He wasn't able to find it. But a couple of years later, after the Blu-ray came out, he found the footage and he sent it off, got it cleaned up, put new music to it. And so he does the entire original song that he was going to do for that scene, and it's available on YouTube now. That anybody can go look at it, the missing scene from Rockula with Thomas Dolby singing I Hold Your Hand in Mine. So he's definitely embraced it, if anybody has, yeah.
And thank you for telling me that. I'm going to write it down now. So what about Toni Basil? I know she's had a contentious sort of career, and she's had a contentious sort of relationship to, the music industry and a lot of the projects that she's done. I mean, I know she had even a contentious relationship with Mickey, the song Mickey. Has she acknowledged Rockula at all in any way, shape, or
So
form?
there is a video on YouTube where she talks about Rockula for about 2 minutes. I don't think it's something that she's proud of. It didn't do well in the theater. She put a lot of energy into it. She did her own choreography, hired somebody to write the song that she does in the movie, The Night. And I don't think that she was happy with the final product. And unfortunately, that didn't translate, 30 years later very well either. A lot of people, including my friend Shabba Do from Breaking 2, Electric Boogaloo. That's another interesting story I'll have to tell you about, is how I met him because of Rockula. And he was actually on the Lockers with her. And even he reached out to her and asked her if she would, talk about Rockula with this reunion group. And she didn't want anything to do with it. So it didn't, unfortunately, translate well for everybody. Not everybody, appreciates that cult status. And even though Dean, agreed to appear, Dean Cameron, you can tell he's a little bit disappointed, when he talks about how it just didn't succeed. It was his first leading man role. And so he really thought that this was going to be the movie that would kind of help his career take off. And unfortunately, the exact opposite happened. And, he got fewer and fewer roles after that. And so it was very bittersweet for him that, now all these new fans are appreciating what he did. But at the time, it just fell flat. So.
But that happens, with almost every cult musical that we talk about. Like, I think Dean is sort of along the lines of Maxwell Caulfield in Grease 2. He thought Grease 2 he was going to be in the next John Travolta. And of course, we know that it jet-setted Michelle Pfeiffer's career.
Right.
But I think there's a bittersweetness there. Grease 2 has a massive following now. They had a big reunion screening in Hollywood, and I think it's like I think some of the celebrities or the artists in the film are like, why not then? But some things are before their time, you know. Some
Totally.
things are their time, and it takes a while. But you also said that there were some distribution problems that made it to where it was impossible for it to be released.
Right. And so what had happened was that they did film it in 1988. It took 2 years of red tape as the studio was falling apart. Canon Films was falling apart. And by the time they were ready to release it, they had no funds left. And so it was basically shown in 3 theaters, including one in his hometown. They made that happen for him, Dean Cameron, that is. So it was only shown in like 3 theaters around the country and went directly to DVD or went directly to VHS. I'm sorry, not DVD, VHS. And hardly anybody saw it. A couple of years later, there was a Laserdisc released. And what's interesting about the Laserdisc is that on the back of it, on the artwork, there is a scene on there with Thomas Dolby dressed up as Mr. Hyde from Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde from a dream sequence where Ralph faces a jury of his peers, including Frankenstein and the Wolfman and Mr. Hyde, Stanley as Mr. Hyde. And that scene was cut from the movie. It ended up on the cutting room floor. And so the only thing that survived is this little picture of Stanley on the back of the Laserdisc release dressed like Mr. Hyde. So I always thought that was interesting piece of trivia there.
It evades me why, musicals cut or films in general cut such great scenes. I mean, on my Best Little Whorehouse episode, Dolly wrote a lot more songs than ended up in the Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, but she eventually released them on an album. This is a quick question. I don't know if you might know the answer to this, but did Dean Cameron provide his own vocals in the movie?
He did. Dean sang all of his own vocals and he played his own instruments. So, he's actually a very accomplished guitarist. I think it was you I was talking to about he on Instagram for years. He's done this thing called karaoke, where he goes out and plays as a live band for people to sing karaoke to on, I think, Thursdays or something. So, yeah, he's quite the musician, actually. So it only made sense, for him to get this role. And my favorite playing that he does is in that final song, Hey, Rockula. He just shreds on that electric guitar, man. It's so good. And that's all him. So, yeah.
And like I was talking to another cult musical fan, like we talked about earlier. It's a treasure trove of cult musical icons. You've got Susan Terrell, of course, from Cry Baby and from Forbidden Zone. Toni Basil, she's a cult icon anyway with her cult music. And then Thomas Dolby, and it's sad that it wasn't appreciated, but I'm glad that it's getting a second life, no pun intended, or an afterlife, no pun intended. But this is a sort of a funny sort of way to end. So Rocky Horror, they have their own fan base. The names, Hedwig's fan base is called Headheads. We made up some Best Little Whorehouse fan groups, the Moaners, the Sidesteppers, the Chicken Ranchers. If you had to name the cult that follows this cult musical, what name would you come up for the cult of Rockula?
Oh, easy. Rockulites. Yeah, we're the Rockulites. We've been spreading the Rocky love now since 2017 on Fans of Rockula. So that's what we call ourselves over there. Yeah.
Or you could be the Rhinestone Pegleggers.
That would be great as well. Yes. Oh my goodness.
The plot and the ham bone. It's so strange. It's hilarious, and it's cringy, but that's what makes it so endearing. Is there anything that you can foresee in the future taking place in terms of like maybe a Rockula screening or a Rockula convention?
Yeah, I could see maybe for the 35th anniversary, that would be, hopefully I'll be in a position to help out with that. I do some writing and some events myself, and it would be great if I could get, the surviving cast and crew together to do an event. Maybe a Rockula Palooza like they do with Phantom of the Paradise, like they do Phantom Palooza up there in Winnipeg, but I don't know. It's a long shot for sure. There's of course limited interest, but then the logistics of it, But yeah, I could definitely see something like that happening at some point. I don't know if you saw it in passing or not, but somebody actually reached out to the director and the producer who wants to do a musical of Rockula. Somebody in Boston is writing a musical version of Rockula for the stage, like off Broadway musical of Rockula. So stranger things have happened.
I mean, Shock Treatment got adapted to the stage in the UK. There was talks of Teen Witch getting adapted to the stage, but of course, Disney's MGM's owned by Disney, and Disney doesn't allow the rights for anything. Um, that would be incredible. It could be sort of niche, sort of like the Toxic Avenger stage musical
Yeah.
and and Evil Dead the musical, the stage
Yes.
musical. Keep us updated. I would totally go see it wherever I could.
Oh, definitely, definitely. As soon as I hear anything, you'll be the first to know.
Thank you so much. Is there anything that you want to leave us with, or any wisdom you want to impart on us regarding
You know what? Rockula is just all about fun. And so if you go into it with no expectations, you're going to come away with a great time. You're going to laugh your butt off. You're going to remember these songs long after the first time you hear them. It's the kind of movie that you just watch again and again because it is just so fun. You could tell that everybody involved was given 110%. So, yeah, just be open-minded and you'll love it.
And what better season than start watching it? I would consider to have a cult movie musical Halloween marathon and make Rockula on your list, and Billy the Kid, the Green Bay's Vampire, which I'll send you as soon as we finish recording, and then Teen Witch, and
fantastic.
All Rocky Horror. I mean, I always say it doesn't start and stop with Rocky Horror Picture Show. There's so many cult musicals that are as good or not even better than the last. So thank you so much for being here, and I can't wait to speak with you soon about Rockula.
And if I dream it, don't wake me. If it's love, then take me. Nothing can stop us now. Destiny.